Hey there, it's Andre here with a milestone episode that I can't really believe I'm here. And I had to share this experience with the first guest host we had in episode one, Nicole Solitar from Strategic Coach. She's a program advisor with Strategic Coach for over 10 years and works hand in hand with high achieving entrepreneurs. So she gets a little bit of an idea how crazy entrepreneurs are, especially me, because I'm going to repeat it again, is I've been working with Nicole for quite a long time. So she's seen me during my undiagnosed days, during my diagnosis period and my life tempest, and my post-diagnosis time and post-diagnosis, where all three layers had challenges and ultimately personal growth. And I couldn't think of anyone else to celebrate this episode without Nicole. Thanks again. And thank you for pushing me to do this and not back out to start
Yeah,
this.
I'm so excited and yeah, truly honored to be, back 100 episodes later, which is such a huge milestone. And I know that there was a lot of encouragement to get that first one and some of
Encouragement's an understatement, by the
yes.
way, listeners.
Nagging. But and it was so much leading up to that first episode and what was the structure going to look like. Okay, maybe I can get an interview every other month. And it just exploded with the list of people that were interested in being
Yeah.
on, having you on, their podcast. And your very first short was about the challenges of getting started and just hitting record. So now, I
Yeah.
mean, how does it feel to have completed 100 episodes, and what took so long to get
Took so long. What?
to get started?
Oh, to get yeah. Well, first of all, 100 episodes in now. It's unbelievable. I never thought I would be able to get to this point easily. And easy, I mean by having so many people interested, people saying yes to come on and have a conversation, and the reception I've had by having this podcast dedicated to high achieving ADHD entrepreneurs has just been, it's been overwhelming but gratifying. And I just couldn't believe how easy it was to find people using my network for the first time ever. And people automatically saying yes. There's no having to sell them. Just like, sure, you're doing what for who? Amazing. Let's go. Let's do it. Um, and it's unbelievable. I can't believe season two's in a couple of weeks. That's starting up soon in October, which is North America wide National ADHD Awareness Month. So season two is coming up. And I thought I would have to struggle and beg and come up with stuff all the time to talk.
Yeah.
And what I'm really proud of the fact is I don't have any solo Monday podcast episodes. It's always with someone else. My impulsive thinking has to have someone else, but at the same time, I always like having conversations with people, and rather than just listening to one person talk all the time. So I get to do that with the short, which I've had a lot of great feedback that I actually thought of getting rid of it, but many came back and says, no, that's good because they're short,
Yep.
thoughts, and they can listen to it whenever because they know on a drive. So I'm going to keep that. And the format's working, and the whole guest host concept like we're doing today, everyone can't believe I'm doing that, and it's changing the way how some people see podcasts. So I like to think that slight change
Yeah.
helps the interest of people.
Yeah. And there's, a couple of things in what you've just said. One is, a main goal for you in getting this podcast started and, tactical, which is going to be, a place for more resources, right?
Yeah.
Was, I think, awareness, but also building this sense of community. And, I think it's maybe there wasn't as much of an idea of how big that community truly was until something like this started, hence the lineup, of people wanting to be on it and, all of the amazing feedback, that you've gotten, unsolicited from people. And I think a lot of their why is really around the community. So, kind of how have you seen that really grown or become a lot more, intentional, let's say, in how you're thinking about, the podcast and what's to
Yeah,
come.
like like they say ADHD is 5 to 7% of the population. So that's already a small market, small people, high, eight entrepreneurs is just makes that smaller out of that group. And then what I noticed was for the high achieving ADHD entrepreneur, there was nothing out there.
Mm.
I always felt like an oddball, even in the other ADHD groups, even in the other entrepreneurial groups, I was still an outsider. And I think I've been searching. I forget who I was talking to, but basically, I'm going to build a community. I think it was you. Build a community that I never had that I've always been looking for, and that's what I really want to do. Is to get the high achieving entrepreneurs together, ADHD entrepreneurs together, so that we don't have to explain our symptoms or justify them, and we just get it, and that we have all these challenges and struggles and work together on it. But to go back to some a little further, you just mentioned is why the podcast. There was nothing out there for me. Like I'm also a gifted ADHD entrepreneur who also has Asperger's. So now I also made a big realization was nothing just need things to stimulate me is to keep things interested. It has to be intellectually stimulating at the same time. So there's another layer. And I'm starting to see that with a lot of other high achieving ADHD entrepreneurs that there's nothing out there. So the resources weren't there for the high achieving ADHD entrepreneur. There's a lot of information and stats and research that I devour because my learning skills and my fact finding abilities and then my ability to simplify complex things for others. I thought, while I research, I like to share information.
Yeah.
One way to do it, but also at the same time, it was an internal discovery, which is, I think, was also important for me greatly and resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that's where the shorts, I'm glad to hear you say that you're going to continue those. I mean, I think that's where you really do get a little bit more insight into the way that you think. And I think, part of this podcast as well was being able to bring some of the the structures and tools and habits that you've created to help really support what could be seen as, weaknesses within a symptom for a strength, right? How are you using those for you? And I think the shorts are so cool because you really hear the thinking behind the creation of those. And that's really bringing you to the table, right? And it adds a lot of context, I think, to all of the other elements of what you're creating to support this community that you're talking about.
And then from the random, well, I call them random. Someone gave me trouble because it wasn't random, but these unsolicited emails and LinkedIn comments, it's just blow me away. And like it's all about how they were validated, how quote unquote what you've been saying resonates with me. They feel inspired, and the way I reframe guest comments to make it accessible and applicable to the listeners has been very helpful. And those are all stuff that, to me, those are all just natural abilities, but it's a strength that other people appreciate. And I know as a fact, because of this podcast, I've had 7 people tell me they've gone for a diagnosis. I got many others saying, I think I'll look more into it. So I know it's hitting things, and these are just the things I've heard from directly. So the amount of listeners that are out there, thanks for listening. It's hard for me to say it's helping people because of what I'm doing. And to me, that just feels like a very selfish bragging thing to say, but it feels good that I know it's helping people, and at the same time, it helps me.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I think that you are, helping people. And I think there's even just, again, that sense of like not being alone. And I think another piece of it for you is this openness to like always be learning, right? And you talked about that right at the start of this podcast. And so you really do seek to continually gain knowledge and reframe how you think, and then add that into what you already know, and how could that be repurposed? Or so I guess my next question is, I know you and I've known you at many phases right through this journey. And you've always been really focused on that idea of self-awareness and
Yeah.
self-discovery. But it's a never-ending thing, right? And so what is maybe one learning in this past 100 episodes, the shorts and all of your interviews, what's one, new learning or one strength of your, ADHD that you feel has really, been, your understanding's really been deepened around?
Well, like for me, having all these conversations and discussions actually clarified a lot of things or put into context of things I have done and made me understand why I did them. Like, for example, in episode 91, I was talking to Don Barden, and his thing was he's dyslexic, right? He's not supposed to learn. He's a resistant fact finder. He doesn't need a lot of information. So, but he's got a doctorate degree. Well, he's got a lot of degrees. Let's put it that way. And how did he do it? Well, he learned how to learn, right? And that's a big message. That's a message for everyone. Everyone learns differently. Learn how you learn. And then he explained in detail how what he did was learn on how to understand things, not learn to memorize or to remember. And that hit me. I'm like, that's why as an engineer, I always need to go to the first principles, and I push my team to learn the first principle, because that just put a context to me. I've always needed to learn to understand for me to remember it and to apply it. So that, like, those kind of aha moments I'm having with other people, right? So I don't know everything, but these conversations are helping me see things in myself. Guests have seen things in themselves and the listeners. And then another one too is in episode 35 with Femke Havinka, which is a big one for me, was bore out versus burnout. ADHD brains get bored first before they actually burn out. And to me, that was a big aha moment in my whole life. It's just, I get bored easy. That's it. My problem is I get bored easy. I don't like sitting idle. I'm afraid of that. So I got to keep doing more crap. I got to just keep going. Right.
Interesting. And the bore out, I mean, versus burnout, like that should be TM'd for sure. If it's not, that's amazing. But, and that too, I think, even part of starting anything, or conversations with you about starting anything, podcast included, and you said it, like, how do I keep it interesting, right?
Yeah.
How is it complex? And the minute it starts to get route or, status, you lose interest. That I think is the beauty of the podcast and how you've set it up with the interviews is it's always a new conversation. There's always a new opportunity, to learn something or to think about something in a different way. And so you've built in a way to keep it really fascinating, right? And motivating versus potentially the bore outside. So it's a really
like self-discovery and reflection. It's a never ending. Like you're not going to stop one day and say, hey, I figured everything out. No, like all you do is it's refinement. It's continual refinement. Once you fix a couple of issues or you realize a few things, it can be fixed for the positive or corrected to negate a negative. But there's always something else we can do a little better, and to be aware of that, like, to me, is key. And it's a big undertaking. It's hard work to look at yourself and say, hey, that actually sucks. And for me, and I know with a lot of other ADHD entrepreneurs, is I'm really good at that. But why are these idiots paying me? Right? Why? Really? Okay. To me, that's not $100 service. It's a $10 service. Like, we just got to keep looking at it. Says, no, I'm really good at this. This is what I value. This is what people value me for. I got a shortcut. I'm a simplifier. So get me into a complex catastrophe and I can just simplify, clarify it, see what's going on, find the solution for everyone to figure it out and move on. And I leave. Right. Yeah. Like, to me, I always brace it. Well, you got to sort the problem, but then you got to finish the whole thing. But now I hate the back part. Once the problem is solved, I got no longer interest. It's no longer challenging. You know what? Now I'm giving myself permission to say no more.
Yeah.
Got a team to take care of the rest. That's the whole point. They love that part. I don't understand why, but that they love it. So let them have it, let them do it, and just guide them and just solve chaos. That's my thing. but
Yeah.
giving me permission to that, even that was tough.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't have to understand why, right? It's just appreciating that it's different. And I
Hmm.
think, I mean, this is a little bit of a teaser, I suppose, to what's coming as a support for people. But back to the idea of like the understanding and what you said about creating shortcuts, you know, you've done all of the legwork and the fact finding and the knowledge gathering and the self discovery and the reflection and all of those things. And with your strengths to shortcut, you've been able to put into short tools and thinking structures a way for people to get that outcome without having to go and do, the mass
Experience
amount
my
of,
my
yes,
last 40 years. Yeah.
yes, right.
Yeah. Because a lot of the shortcuts I discovered that I created were all during my undiagnosed times. And I can bring it right back to when I was a child, actually.
Yeah. But
Um,
it's funny that idea of the understanding versus, just remembering, is really built into the tools that you've created.
well, it's also validating. Like this, like, yeah, I didn't, even though I just understand ADHD, or now I understand why I did it, but just getting the diagnosis and understand that I was doing it right
Mhm.
is huge,
Mhm.
right? Like I've
Yeah.
always known who I was, but I
Mhm.
always told it's not the normal way. Not in so many words, but basically this is not how people do it. This is you're perceived as not normal. We got to change our ways. But I always fought to understand why I could not be me. I could never explain why I thought this way, how I can rapidly think. I can't, that when I'm bored, I get annoying. Um, but the the diagnosis gave me the clarity. Like it's unbelievable. I actually went for the diagnosis to prove it wasn't it, because that was too simple of an answer to to explain everything. Right. So then once I got that, there's no more fighting. It
Mhm.
is what it is. I work with it. I work with the people around me. And if they don't want that, then what do? Then I'm tired of fighting to be someone I'm not.
Yeah.
And to give that a self-assuredness and that ability to others, I think is profound, and it's needed out there.
Mhm.
And like you said, I got shortcuts, just the way I look at things. I don't look at things normal. So the
Mhm.
way I look at things and come out, um, it's just like, wow, it's amazing what you can realize if you just want to sit and be honest. You got to be honest with yourself. If you're not honest with yourself, then these tools don't mean anything, or any of the tools or other learnings you have, right?
100%, 100%. And Dan, I mean, strategic coach, as you said, right? Dan Sullivan, he
Yeah.
always says all progress starts by telling the truth. And I think that is such I mean, there's a lot of facets in that,
Yeah.
quote, but I think it's exactly what you're saying, which is like, you can't make progress or change things without first being really upfront with where they're at, or yeah, these things about me suck, and
Mhm.
instead, how do I, just one of the tools that you have, we'll get to what we're talking about, but like what is the trigger that's underneath it?
Right.
Okay, let's avoid that, right? You're not going to get there if you don't tell the truth up front about what that thing is.
Yeah, and those set of tools is all about, there's everyone's got things out there to fix symptoms. Look at this symptoms, fix this symptom. But in the end, what's the real challenge or the trigger? What triggers the challenge or the difficulty, right?
Mhm.
And that's first principles thinking. I went right down to the root. So I always went down straight down to the trigger, which actually I realized with time solved many, many different symptoms.
Mhm.
Right? If I got a sore wrist and I just put a cast on my wrist, but actually, it's my upper arm that's hurting and my wrist is now hurting because I'm not using my arm properly. Well, I'm just fixing the symptom of the wrist, but not the real problem. Like,
Mhm.
that's why I call my physiotherapist the physioterrorist, because she always goes and she needs to make you uncomfortable and hurt you to find what the real cause is.
Right.
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 And that's what I've always first principles, go deeper and deeper. But it's deep. It's a hard conversation to have with yourself, but at the end, if you know, it's life changing. I know
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. You've referenced a couple of the, I think amazing emails and kind of unsolicited feedback and thank yous and emails and there's some pretty incredible response to what you've been, putting out into the universe. What is, one of the maybe most common whys of people listening, or the most kind of common thing that you've heard that for you really gave you encouragement to keep this going and think of other ways to help support, this amazing community that you're building?
From the listener side, majority are saying that the openness, discussion of my challenges and with others resonates with them. And the way, like the last one I just got email says, everything you just described in that episode was me. And, and to me, when you hear that, we're not alone. There are people and we are successful. It's just, we got to retrain our brain to realize that we are successful. But from a guest side, after every episode I record, all of them pretty much say, wow, I can't believe how good of an interview you are. Whatever. But they all seem to follow up with that the way I summarize the conversation, the way I restate things for clarity for the listeners, or at times I always say I just restate it from a different point of view so different types of brains could see it or understand it. And the big thing that I like, we really love, is I always ask great expansion questions. Not just the first question, so all those follow-up questions to expand, or you got, you just said something, what about this? And like, to me, that's good. Like, I really love that, because then I'm learning more and I'm doing something different. And I always wanted to like doing something different, not what everyone else does. And that's what I want to do with my episodes, was not to be like everyone else.
And I mean, clearly that is what the response has been, which is, you understand me and you're able to kind of speak a language that I get. Right. And also, I mean, kudos for being able to accept positive feedback. I know
it's like long stretch, long road.
You're doing a great job and saying thank you. That's big. So I have to ask, 100 episodes in, obviously you've done, interviews and shorts and obviously guest interviews. No pressure. No, you don't have to say me. What is kind of your most favorite episode that you've done? I definitely have one that I just loved listening to. Maybe it's the same as yours, but would love to hear. And they're all, I mean, amazing episodes. They're all different, amazing hosts that totally bring out different conversation. But what would be
my
your
favorite short is actually episode 2, which you referenced. That's where I was scared to hit record. Actually, I was just out there a few weeks ago. I was in the same boat, same location where I recorded that. But I took time off and I pushed myself not to record being back at the scene. But anyways, scared to hit record was my favorite because I really had to push myself to be fearless and just try it. This is so personal to me. It's been 40 years of challenges, most negative. And then to throw myself out there to people, like talking one-on-one is one thing, but now to throw yourself out there, my old core beliefs came back in strong. No one's going to listen to you. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just an idiot. Everyone that's told about you were raised is true. So doing that, and then also I'm feeling when I hit stop, it was like, wow, this is easy, right? Months and months and months of holding back. This big fear of, oh, it's actually nothing, right? So that helped me gain the momentum and continue with motion. My favorite interview is episode 25, which is where I had the discussion with my daughter about undiagnosed ADHD and family, how it affects. I've had a couple emails about that. One actually told me I was an idiot for doing that. Shouldn't share stuff like that. Really? And I had quite a few over saying it was pretty brave. And
that was my favorite for sure. I just loved it.
And I love that she was candid and honest, and she can accept what I was saying too, but we both learned and made realizations. And to me, that was the important thing, to teach her that you can have hard conversations, but you got to be open to hear and listen. And we can make outroads.
And I think it added another element or another dynamic for some of the other conversations around, symptoms of
Yeah.
strengths and how those things show up. This is not, and I know that, you have a ton of people listening, but certainly lots of high achieving, entrepreneurs with ADHD, and you go everywhere. So yes, you can talk about how it,
Hmm.
affects your business. And I know you've done a lot of work on creating structures and tools within your professional life to really excel, right? And
Hmm.
get growth easier, faster. But it was so cool to add in how these things show up and translate personally as a father,
Yeah.
or, as a husband. Or I remember you saying, sometimes you're right in your head and you're not listening, and how that's received, right? Versus
Hmm.
what it actually means. I'm not disinterested. I'm just completely in my own in my own head. So I just thought that was so raw and so vulnerable, but it also really highlighted the dynamics beyond just as a professional, which is,
Well, that too, and I wasn't feigning fakeness, like, or perfection. Like
yeah.
the whole, there's a whole point of this podcast is we're not perfect, we'll never be, and I'm not going to pretend that I am,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to be honest with that, like, we're not going to be perfect. Let's stop striving for perfection, even though that's what our brain likes to do and the way we're raised. But that's what it is. Now, I do have two others.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's more on the personal side. A personal favorite, I would say. I mean, it's more of a personal revelation side. It was episode 32 with the power of beliefs with Megan O'Neill, and how negative energy over so many years and decades, or it gets absorbed without you cognitively thinking about it. And those core beliefs actually dictate and direct your days. To me, that was a big one. And another one, the ones that was very, very important, I thought, was episode 41 and 43, where we talked about men and mental health with Mark Fujiwara. I thought those were powerful. He shared his story, his depression, and his challenges, and how it affected his family, and then how men don't like to talk about it. It's about time that we stop and just, we got to take care of our mental health first before anything else really works well. And I thought that was two powerful episodes too.
Huge. I mean, they're all good, they're all great. And I think there's so much value in each one, but it's cool to hear for you some of those standouts. And I know a lot of, again, the process of this podcast has given you a lot of insight into what else, right? What's needed beyond this for continuing to support this group. So I know you said season 2 is launching shortly, which is exciting to know.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of interviews and shorts to come, but what's next beyond, another 100 episodes? What for you has this really started to, give you passion and energy for?
It's conversations like this, other conversations, intellectual conversations, actually, with great people who are all about self growth and discovery. And I like the stories from self growth and self discovery based on other people's challenges or even their successes. So I like to bring on this high achieving ADHD entrepreneurs to share their stories. What have they learned? What's their challenge?
Mhm.
Right. Um, you know, I want to provide more helpful tips now that I've got a pattern, and, really, I just started this just going, head down, ass up kind of thing. And then with just the overwhelming response of people being on, just kept that momentum going. And I want to be a little more strategic and thoughtful about providing more helpful tips. Um, and then I want to bring on more high achieving HD entrepreneurs to discuss their stories. I've had a lot of great responses from the ones that I have been doing with. But ultimately, and I think this is what I've always wanted, and I got it into words, is I just want to be, I'm talking to the listener now. I want to be your support, your resource, and I want to help you to be your best self. and to understand what you should be doing and what you should be doing all the time. So that can bring you great joy. And then we do not need to manage your symptoms because you're working in your proper tasks and jobs, that stuff that you do well and thrive at. And I've been denied that a long time, and I want to help others see that. And since I gave them my permission to do it, and don't really need to manage my symptoms much, as long as I'm in that hyperactive mode. If I'm doing what I love best and I do best, I hyper focus automatically. So how can I help you with that? And that's what I want to do. And that's what I want to concentrate on. The next 100 in season 2 is, let me help you and show you some how.
I love that. And lots of different opportunities for that to come.
Yeah. And I'm going to be, now I'm going to take more of a proactive, people sign up for newsletters and that, and I'm going to take more proactive and try to write something monthly. I'm going to start with monthly and with little tidbits. And then, like I said, we got tools that are coming out that I'm putting down on paper. People are forcing me to get it out of my head and on the paper. And I've tried a few of these tools on other ADHD entrepreneurs, and they've come up with big stuff. I know one's been diagnosed for 20 years and just realized a couple of things. So it's like, I think these things are going to be helpful with tactical breakthroughs, developing a high achieving ADHD entrepreneur journey, transformation journey, I'd call it, just so we can better understand you, how you work best, what you should be doing, and how to structure your team around you to keep doing what you do best and not do the things you don't like.
Yeah. And you've got some tools that already you can download and take a look at and play around with. But I know that you're working on more of those to come to just help guide people through that thinking, give them the shortcut, to really get to that deeper understanding. And like you said, just be able to be in their zone, and get in their groove, if you will, and not worry about everything else. And just figure that out.
So
love it. Well,
perfect.
Congratulations on 100 episodes since our first one. Pretty amazing accomplishment. I'm glad I pushed and nagged, and I know that you're creating something that a lot of people have really, I think, enjoyed, but also gotten a lot of impact and a lot of insight from. And the goal going into this, I was looking back at kind of the very first breakdown of why the podcast, it was all about just awareness around ADHD, seeing symptoms as strengths, building a community. And, here we are 100 episodes in, and I would say check, check, check. So congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks, Nicole.
Amazing journey.
Perfect. Yeah. And I appreciate your support and everything you've done. And to the listener, 100 in, thank you very much for listening and returning every week. I would love to hear from you. If you can go to the website, theimpulsivethinker.com, send me an email, or on LinkedIn, or just send me an email direct at andre@andreb.ca. I want to hear from you. I want to hear ideas of what you want to hear and what I can help bring to you. If I don't know it, guess what? I'll research the hell out of it and come back and report. That's what I love to do, and that's what I'm good at. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much, everyone. Nicole, thank you very much. And the next episode interview, actually the start of season 2. So, and that'll be with Peter Shankman, who is the author of Faster Than Normal. So I think stay tuned for that one. That'll be a good one. And thanks again for listening. And I will actually say thank you and goodbye.